welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast. I am so happy to have with me artist Brett Manning, and recently published author also. Brett produced this incredibly beautiful book. It's insightful, it's enchanting, it's inspiring. I'm going to be showing you some of my favorite pages from this as we chat along. But welcome, Brett. So nice to speak to you.
Thank you. You as well. This is very exciting for me.
Yeah, it's so great because we've kind of been in touch for quite a while now, and I've been following your work on Instagram, and you've been really supportive of the podcast too. And yeah, it feels like, along with quite a number of other researchers and artists too, um, we're something that's kind of been revitalized in the area of, exploring the Fae. And it feels like we're kind of on similar vibes with each other. And we're sort of, although, there are researchers that take different angles and obviously artists that will present in different ways as well. There's a real kind of, there's a sense that it's coming from the same place in some way, that there's a lot of kind of heart connection going on, it feels like anyway. And yeah.
I completely agree. It's been really interesting to see the works of different artists that I was unaware of for the longest time, and they're creating things that are strikingly similar to things that I'm creating. And I'll hear stories as well, and they're so similar to things that I've experienced. And so for that, I just am really grateful that there's a community of people who are sharing these things together, and we're somehow all finding each other right
Yeah.
now.
It's so true. And perhaps we can talk about how, whether lockdown had any kind of particular surge for you, because, and it may well not have done, but a couple of other women that I've spoken to recently that are fellow researchers, we realized, and we hadn't really, hadn't known until recently, that we all began this part of our journey in a kind of it's almost like we had stuff going on in the background, from sort of 2016-ish onwards. And then, but then with lockdown, it started to become external. We were kind of preparing for that to go externally into the world. And I don't know whether that resonates with you or not.
Very much so. Actually, the book that I just put out is a mostly newer work starting from 2020, but a lot of the smaller illustrations came from smaller little books that I had put out starting in 2015, 2016. I think that's when I self-published those as well. But I had been sitting on those for a really long time, and for some reason, I was just completely compelled and inspired to just finally finish that giant project, which was the book one. So I'm glad I went through with it. I was kind of sitting on it for a couple years, and with lockdown, um, it wasn't even that I had extra time. I was more busy in 2020 than any other year I can think of. So I was just working so hard all the time, but it didn't feel like work at all. It was just so fun for me.
I think it's really clear that, you obviously just really love what you do, and it feels like, it's almost like it's coming through you, because it feels very inspired. Um, and I forgot to say the name. It's one foot in the green, and I'll, put your links up later and things like that. So how did this all come about? Is this area, fairies and the other world, and is this something that you were interested in from a very early age? How did it all come about with your artwork too?
So, I do have a story I can tell where I think um, I maybe had a fairy sighting when I was younger. But before that, even beyond that, I wasn't really into fairies, I guess, because I only knew what basically what Disney was presenting me with. So, outside of that, I was always extremely interested, almost obsessed with like Sasquatch and aliens, just like the world of cryptids and ghosts. So I was always kind of in that world, but also incredibly inspired by just the natural world. Like Beatrix Potter is probably one of my biggest inspirations. Those were my favorite books as a kid, and even reading them now, they're just so charming and cute, and I just love them. Um, so it's just a combination of the natural world and animals and plants with my obsession for the paranormal. And somehow, I can't even think of how it happened, but I must have been reading a book or watching a show, or somebody was talking about um, ancient, like Irish fairy traditions, and something just sparked within me. And I was like, this is incredible. And it was like a door was unlocked. And so I just obsessively started researching all of that and finding out that there were so much more beyond just tiny little winged creatures. Like those might be some of the fairies, but definitely not all of them. And it was an obsession driven thing. And it just felt like extremely personal, like it was meant to come to me during that time. So um, I've been obsessed ever since. That was probably 2019 or something.
Oh, okay.
Pretty recently, actually. Before
Yeah, wow.
kids, really. But
Before the what, sorry? Before.
before my fairy obsession, I was mostly just in the cryptid realm. So, but I feel like they're between all of these things anyway. So um, I feel like fairies were just a natural progression of my interests. So,
Yeah, because in your book also you have sections on, the black dog. There's some Sasquatch pictures
mhm,
in there as well. So there are these, other aspects of, as you say, we've come to feel that they are very similar and potentially interconnected, as in where they hail from or how they um how they yeah compare to our own world.
mhm. It's almost like similar strange energies that they all kind of have that links them for me in a way, in a personal way. All the things I'm saying are just very personal. And um, I feel like everybody's experience and what their thoughts are on what these things are is going to be different. But I think that's also part of what they are. Um, they're all kinds of things to different people, but for me, they all kind of resonate with each other on this um, now I'm just rambling. You can cut this out.
Not at all. I mean, because that comes across in the book as well, and I think that that's really useful to say. Um, you make a point of saying, "This is how it was for me," but find the resonance and the meaning in it for yourself. Here's, some information, obviously with the beautiful pictures, but see how this feels to you. Go and explore what this means to you. And that's exactly what it's all about. And that is, what a lot of us are doing as well. We're not saying this is how it is.
Right. And I
Um,
you're clear of ever doing that because I don't think that there is just one way of it being. I think everybody is, though we're a community, we all have our own individual ways of looking at things, and I think they're all valid. So I guess that's what I was trying to say. Maybe you don't have to cut that. It'll just sound like me, but slightly coherent.
Yeah, that's it. It's just interesting to hear other people's points of view. And when I have these amazing guests come on the podcast and tell me about their experiences, you know, that's the beauty of it. It's just their own personal experience. And everybody's is so different as well. This is a thing, but there is something that ties them together, and it's that same sense that ties us all, researchers and artists together too. And I don't know, maybe it feels a bit magic, that there's a knowingness behind it all.
Right. And it's very hard to articulate. So, but yeah, I just, I'm, I'm not the most social person. I'm very awkward, but at the same time, I feel such a strong connection to just the the world around me, and even the people. They're part of the world around me, but you know, I might seem shy and standoffish, but at the same time, I don't know. I hold multitudes within. I can also feel very connected to all the things at the same time. So,
Yeah. And the world, it can sometimes be quite an overwhelming place as well. So
mm,
it's good to know, where you're comfortable to be. And, the best thing of all is that you're clearly doing, well, it seems from looking from the outside anyway, you're sort of doing exactly what you came here to do, if you want to sort of look at it from that perspective. So
I definitely feel
I'm just
very- oh, sorry.
sorry. There's a
Oh,
very slight delay, and I'm
yeah.
aware I'm cutting you out sometimes when I'm talking, but sorry, you were just going to respond to that. Apologies.
Oh, I've already forgotten.
It's okay. I was going to ask you about your experience as a child, if you could describe that, because you've had a number of experiences which you do mention in the book as well.
Yeah. The one that I had as a child is probably the most vivid visual, even though it was technically a backlit shadow of what I saw. But I knew there was something very strange about it. Um, it was well, the sun was going down, so the sky was a very orangey, purpley pink color, and the street lights had just come on, so everything had like a very orange glow. And I was already in my bedroom, supposed to be going to bed, and I just was compelled to look out the window. Um, because I knew that there were rabbits that lived out there, and I love rabbits, and I just like to watch them. And they all started coming out from under this tree, and one of the rabbits had something riding on its back, and it had very long on the entity on the rabbit's back had what looked like very long appendages on its back, which I later think were some kind of like wings, but very long and pointy. But when I was a kid, I thought it was a baby bunny riding on its mother's back, like how an opossum would do.
Right.
Know any better? So I just watched it fascinated and eventually just went to bed. And I told my mom about it in the morning. And she kind of just chuckled and said, rabbits carry their babies with their mouths, not on their back like an opossum. And so I just tucked that away for a long time and always had that exact visual just burned into my brain. And I started kind of illustrating that. And the more I looked at the figure, it was not a rabbit. Was, I was remembering it as a tiny little body with just very long stick like wings. That's what I thought the ears were. So that's one of my only visuals, but um, besides dream things, but those are different. But yeah,
That's so interesting because how old were you?
I was probably between 7 and 8. I was 7 or 8. I don't think I was older than 8.
Yeah. And you know, when you saw that, can you kind of pinpoint it to anything that was happening for you at the time? Where, was does it match with anything that was going on in your life?
That time, I can't say for sure. I, just being a kid, things were happening all the time. I was always fascinated by things and just, I just thought it was cute. And I just kind of threw it away for a long time. And I don't remember anything in my life um, being a huge changing point or anything. Not at that point, at least.
Mm. That's so, yeah, it's so magical. And the thing is with rabbits as well, there's this is the second extraordinary kind of tale that I've heard in the last 24 hours
Oh,
with connected with a rabbit because so a friend of mine, Bethan Briggs Miller, who runs the Eerie Essex podcast with her partner Ailsa, her co-host, I should say, podcast host. They interviewed a guy called Reverend Peter Laws, and he remembers as I think he was a teenager, seeing this figure on a roof. So he was out with some friends, probably getting up to stuff and being somewhere that they shouldn't be, and looked up at the roof and saw this figure, this kind of outline, sort of shadowy figure, who looked like a huge big rabbit. Um, yeah, and I also saw a sort of giant rabbit.
uh-huh.
It's
This is
like a
very,
band of them. Yeah, this is really weird. When I was about I was being between the ages of 3 and 4.
mhm.
Um, so there's something about rabbits.
I completely agree. And I have a tiny little section in my book just
Yeah.
dedicated a little bit of folklore about rabbits, but they're just, I don't know, they've got their little homes underground, which of course is related to a lot of fairy stories. And I don't know, I feel like there has to be some kind of connection there or just something. Rabbits are very silly animals, and I think so are fairies. So I live with a couple of rabbits, and they're the funniest animals I've ever lived with. So,
How did they get on with the pigs? Because you've got two pigs. You've got a female pig and a male pig, haven't you?
oh, I just have one pig.
Oh, did you have the other one over to visit or something then recently?
That was him. That's the same pig.
Oh,
We,
it's the same pig. For
yeah,
some reason, I thought you had two. Okay.
they're two both female, but the piggy, we were pig sitting him for a while, and his owners kind of realized that they didn't have the most ideal living situation. He lived in the city, didn't get out much, and they recognized that he had such a great time on the farm. They asked if he wanted to live with us. Yeah.
That is so cute. Yeah, I'm gonna have to post a picture of him then. What's his name?
His name is Bristle,
So that's
like a
right.
bristly brush.
Cute. So yeah, they get on all right then, the pig and the rabbits and the dog.
Actually, so the rabbits haven't met the pig. They have their own living space in the upstairs of our house, and they don't jump down the stairs. So they're free range. They live upstairs completely, but they just, I don't think they have any desire to hop down the stairs. So I doubt we meet each other.
Yeah, great. That's lovely. So, yes, you mention in the book then that initial experience kind of opened you up, or did you always have the sense that there was more to this world than we're told?
I feel like I've always just innately known that there's something more, and that's hard to elaborate on because I've just always known that it's there, and it's something part of me and part of everybody. But I don't know that everybody recognizes that within themselves, and if they do, I feel like there's a lot of fear or anxiety um, based on presenting that publicly. But I've gotten to a place where I just do not care anymore. So if people want to think that I am crazy, which I don't like that word, but they can think that. Um, but I'm very happy and doing exactly what I want. And I think that's a huge success in life.
Absolutely. I'm 100% with you there as well. I could not give monkeys what people think of me at all. I know that, with what I'm doing as well, people might look at that and they don't understand it for whatever reason, or they think it's wasteful or silly or whatever, but I really don't care. But I know that feeling when you're younger, and the most important thing in the world is just to sort of not stand out because, at school it's tricky, isn't it? But yeah, I think more and more people, it feels like this anyway, that more and more people are just thinking, well, just let's just get on with it, because what we've all been through in the last few years, kind of made us realize that, well, it got us to think about maybe, who are the really important people in our lives. Do we love living where we're living at the moment? Because we had to spend a lot of time at home. Um, and what, am I, do I feel fulfilled in what I'm doing in my life? And I think perhaps that has helped people reevaluate and decide to just go for it. I seem to be seeing and hearing stories, I can see it around me, and I'm hearing stories sort of wider, that people made a decision at that time just to sort of go and do what they really wanted to do. So let's hope
Mhm.
this is a mass thing. It feels like it.
I hope so. If at a small scale right now, I feel like with all of the stuff that I've been seeing going on, which is all pretty interesting and enlightening and positive stuff, like on social media, people, what they're posting, their art, their stories, their podcasts. I feel like it's a really good thing that's happening now, and it's only going to hopefully expand and reach more people and help more people see that there are many ways to think and live your life. And
Mm.
you fairies and cryptids, and it's fine because, like, I don't know, it's more fun to just think that way. Um, it's just
It
a
is
positive, I think. That's
positive
what.
mindset. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's another way to relate to the world, isn't it? And kind of makes me think about acceptance as well, that, you know, through kind of healing system that I've been involved with for many, many years, the body mirror system. I remember chatting to the guy that taught me that, and he was always saying that this time that we're in, we're kind of moving out of ego, we're moving out of solar plexus, and we're moving
Mhm,
into heart chakra. And heart chakra is all about acceptance. And this kind of feels like that you can perhaps, be who you are and feel accepted for that.
mhm, very much so. And I think that is something I wanted to come across in my book. There's a lot of allusions to just, I don't know, it's not only about fairies, it's you could look at it in terms of um, like gender, even. And that's something that a lot of people are realizing, that there are so many more than just two. And it's just a whole spectrum of amazing things. And I think fairies represent that really amazingly. And so, and not only that, there are just ways of thinking, just how different people's brains work. And those are all okay. Like, I recently learned that I am most likely dyslexic. I'm self diagnosed, but everything I've ever seen and heard and read about it, I am definitely in this spectrum of being dyslexic. It's interesting that I wrote a book, and but it doesn't mean I can't read. It just means I take in the information a lot differently. Um, but yeah, I feel like I wanted that to be expressed in the book. Just different differences are not scary at all. That's just part of life. So
Oh, that's really great to hear. And to have to reach that sort of understanding about yourself must be really helpful as well, because you start to you start to understand yourself a lot more when you have these realizations, don't you? So that's
very much.
amazing.
Yeah, I think that's why I like podcasts so much, because I can retain information so much better when I can hear people, or I'm read to, or there's a visual aspect along with it, where that's why I like to draw. I think I hold on to that so much more than reading just a page of text, because none of that sticks at all. There's no comprehension, and I used to be so embarrassed by that, but that I don't care anymore because my brain works differently than other people's. So there's no shame at all.
That's really interesting actually, because I feel I definitely retain information listening rather than reading. And sometimes I'm having to reread and reread, because obviously I, done my degree and I've done my master's. It's really
Mhm.
hard, especially I think because I did my master's after my father passed away, and he had just passed away when I started my master's a month later, and my brain just did not um the parts of my brain that were meant to talk to each other just didn't, I think, just from grief. And I really struggled. And actually, I do find that, yeah, that listening, because as you say, you create those visuals in your mind, and those are the connections that seem to work really well with my way of thinking too. So yeah, that's very interesting.
That is really interesting. Hmm. I
Hmm.
wish I knew more about how those things work, but yeah, it's good that you recognize that in yourself too. Maybe that will help. I don't know. I just know that visuals and vocal, like, is so much better than text for me. Can't do it.
Yeah.
So I almost don't even try. I'll just get a book on tape if I want to listen.
Thank you. I'm sure that'll be helpful to other people watching as well. So I think a big part of your book is that you share how you work with the Fae, and how you have built your own sense of relationship, if you like. I'm not sure if relationship is the right word, but how you approach and how you relate to these worlds and the beings that dwell in those worlds. Could you talk a little bit about that, and how that has developed sort of over the years and fed into your artwork? And I guess it's a cycle, isn't it? Because it just keeps informing, one informs the other, doesn't it?
Right, and it's like constantly updating itself all the time. There's like always something new to add, or I get a lot of my inspiration from dreams and that state right before you actually fall asleep. I have had so many. I've heard a lot of people who have had like alien experiences say they get downloads, and I have experienced that right before, like walking on the cliff of falling into actual sleep and being in wakefulness. So that very liminal area. And that is when I have had extreme visuals of different entities that I put in the book. Um, that's when I've had some stories, just little fun short stories, basically downloaded immediately into my head. um, that sounds so silly to say, but that's just how it happened. I was asleep and it was like instantly a deposit of a story was there, and I was like, that's the whole story, and I had to go write down the bullet points and was too tired to actually write it out, but I wrote it the next day. And um, I feel like dream time is just the place where I get most of my inspiration and things like that. um,
Yeah, it does seem that way. You've had particular dreams as well, haven't you? That you have written about in your book. Could you tell us about those? Because they kind of involved, well, one that you had in particular um, seemed to connect you to that sense of the all. You called it the great all.
yes, and I heard you recently talk about that on a couple shows, or your it was on Paul Bestel's show, and I was just stunned because I the way you described it being in a bright white, mine was more like I was in a space, like a humongous white gallery, but so bright. And I was just in this presence, and in the presence of this entity, but we were equals, we were together, we were walking side by side. And I just knew that next to me was everything, but it condensed itself down into this entity that I could basically perceive. And you also had mentioned that you were kind of surrounded or noticed like purples and amethyst tones. And that those are the colors of what the great all in my dream were. They were like light purples, kind of light ethereal blue, like celestial purpley tones. And I don't know, it's really hard to talk about. I've never talked about this myself, like other than writing it. So, um, yeah, it was a really intense dream, but it was a very good feeling where I was just honored to be in its presence. But it wasn't like it was any greater than me. We were all the same. So if that makes any sense.
No, it does. Absolutely, absolutely does. It was for me, it was this sense of great, it was infinite. So this place, it was just completely infinite. You couldn't see the end of it. But
Mhm.
equally, I kind of felt myself disappear, but I was everything at the same time. It
Mhm.
was just, vast and infinite and just, yeah, everything thrown into one, which I wasn't counting on that when I started the meditation at all. But it just goes to show then, doesn't it? And I imagine lots of people must have felt had that same experience.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'd never heard anybody describe something. They're not exactly the same, but they were similar enough to what I heard you say that I was almost taken aback, and it was really um, affirming or something. Because sometimes I think that, oh, it's just a dream, and maybe it is, but at the same time, it was very helpful. But then I learned that somebody else has experienced something so similar. Um, I just think that's really amazing.
What year would that have happened to you? What year would you have experienced that?
That would have been probably right when we moved here where we live now. So we live in rural Indiana on a like a farm area.
Mm.
So it felt, now that I think back about it, it was an extremely important time in my life where everything became um, like more aligned to what I guess me and my husband were always wishing for ourselves, if that makes sense. Just things kind of falling into place.
Mm.
So, yeah.
It's really great. Yeah. Um, that, what a moment to connect with source, if that's what we call it. And when you were having well, you had that dream and with potentially other dreams as well. Was there anything that you were doing before you went to sleep? Were you kind of meditating before you went to sleep? Or anything about like a routine before you went to sleep or anything like that? And also, I wanted to ask if there was anything about those kinds of dreams that really marked them out as different to, you know,
Mhm.
general general dreams.
Yes, these are dreams that are so not like dreams. They're like I am in another place, and that's extremely apparent when I'm there. And that was one of them for sure. Um, um, I don't think at the time I had started doing l- any kind of ritual before I would go to bed, but I started looking into things like that. So I haven't made this for a while, but I had made some, I call them dream oil blends or dream inducing blends. And they're just either a roll on essential oil perfume, or maybe I've made salves before as well, but I'll infuse different things like mugwort and lavender, and I've been growing those myself the past couple years. So I really want to start using the stuff that I've grown myself in those blends, and just make some more of them because I used to sell them, but I didn't make very many at all. But so many people did tell me that they had some really amazing dreams afterwards. So that was very encouraging. So I hope that maybe the ones that I end up making with the herbs that I actually grow have even even more of something to it.
Yes, I I don't know if you can hear that dog next door. Um, I'm very interested, very interested. A friend gave me a salve recently, and it was oh, it was I think it was mugwort. I think it was mugwort.
Hmm.
And he's just in the process of making a fly agaric one. And but I
Wow,
yeah,
I
I
would be
have
interested in that.
sure. Well, yeah, I'll let him know. But you sell your bits and bobs on Etsy, don't you?
Yeah, my prints and candles and things. I don't make candles and the salves and perfumes that much. I have to be in the mindset to do it. If I'm just making them and there's no intention behind it, then I don't feel as good about it. So I kind of stopped doing that, and I do them seasonally now, with how I'm feeling, how that season, what it kind of brings to me personally, and just, this sounds cheesy, but just kind of like infusing all of my works with those emotions of the season.
Mm.
So it's
Yeah,
hard
that
to turn.
that's great because you're not sort of making things because you feel you have to. You're making them with love and you're making them with, your intuition and wisdom, and that's the best way to go about things.
Yeah, that's what I've definitely been trying to do lately. And yeah, the book just wore me out. I'm tired, so I haven't made a lot of things for a long time, but I'm getting back into that. I suddenly have had just like a jolt of energy, and I'm drawing again. I'm making some candles, and I'm just excited for the dark winter season, really.
Yeah, I always look forward to it. It's my favorite. Well, autumn's my favorite season. I love going into, these dark months. Have you found that now that, and I'm so glad to hear that you've been able to find your own time for drawing again, because I'm sure you've missed that. Have you found now that you have started drawing again, um, is there something new coming through?
Sort of. Maybe what I've been working on lately are just extremely detailed, maybe fairies, some kind of entities, some kind of maybe ultra dimensional entities, but still very nature based. Um, I actually just had two dreams in a row that I feel like have really inspired me to just start all of these new drawings again. The first dream was I was witnessing a UFO over the woods in front of my house, and that dream was followed up by just an avalanche, like a crowd of fairy people of all shapes and sizes. And I have no idea how they're connected to each other, but they felt like they were. So I'm just like, that's my springboard, and that's where I'm taking this new collection of drawings. So we'll see what happens.
I am really excited for that. I mean, considering, you were inspired to draw what you did when you did before, and how much that has resonated with the interest that people have in this area. Um, and of course, my own research as well as many other people's, we are interested in those kind of interdimensional beings. And the connectedness with that as well. So yeah, I think we're we're traveling down these similar paths, and it just all adds to the it adds to the picture, doesn't it, for all of us?
Hmm. Yeah, it's just inspiration for me is just the means of what keeps life moving and evolving. Just when I get all of these strange dreams and downloads, it's just it it leads I'm so fascinated and my brain can't leave it alone. So it just leads to inspiration and creation, and I don't know, creation and is connected to life, and I don't know, I think it's just a continuum of life, really.
Yeah, I agree. I I feel very alive when I'm, doing my work, and I'm sure you,
Mhm,
feel the same.
mhm. It's very meditative for me, and I used to think I was incapable of meditating, how most people would describe it's done, but I genuinely think that whenever I can sit down and draw, I that's a form of meditation for me, and that's when just I never have I rarely have like a finished idea of what this creature drawing is going to end up looking like. It just I let it happen organically. So that's kind of the goal with my work, like try to not be super contrived with what my expectations are for the final piece, just to like let it live its own life, really. So
Well, I mean, the characters just jump off the page of this book, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle some of these pictures with your permission,
Mhm.
onto our video so that people can see them as we're talking about them. I
Sure.
mean that they really just have their own character, and yeah, I will put them in front of the screen so I can show people. I mean, I'm really loving the black dog as well.
Yeah, that one's based on a dream too. That visual was something I saw in a dream. So many of these things in here are just they were just like stamped in my dream, and then I try to just collect that energy that I felt from it, and if I wasn't feeling it, then I told myself that this pair this fairy is not consenting to be drawn, and so I'm gonna just respect it. So everything in the book is something that wanted to be in the book, in my opinion. So um, there's
I
actually oh sorry,
sorry, what were you just going to say then?
one of the fairies in there I feel demanded to be in the book, and he was not in the the first draft, and I just kept having dreams about him, and then I finally put him in there in the final draft, and it was a whole ordeal to get it in there and get all the pages aligned again, and it was so chaotic and just silly. And then when I got all my books in, that is the one fairy that I misspelled his name, and I feel like it was intentional, so it would draw even more attention to him. So, ugh, I'm not gonna say who it is. People will find it because I'm not gonna bring more attention to him because that's all he wants, I think.
That's brilliant and very fairy because they're
Mhm.
so mischievous.
I was so mad about it at first, but the more I thought about it, it was just so typical. So now I think it's just a fun story.
That's great about the sort of asking permission as well, though, because did you ever get a very firm no about things?
Mm, there are probably some sketches I could look back through and see, like, oh, I never finished that one, and I could tell you why. But I put those away. They're all tucked away right now.
Mm.
So there are a few, but mm, it was never. There weren't tons and tons of them. If I got that impression, then I just wouldn't really even think about it anymore. I would just kind of leave it alone.
I think that's a really useful tip for people in general when interacting with the Fae, basically. I think, it's a kind of sense thing and drawing back if it doesn't feel right and the most sensible thing to do. Mm.
Right. And it was important for me to not show them in like a as though they're a novelty or something, but bring through their actual personality. Um, Not just like silly little tricksters, which, a lot of them are that, but there's so much more to all of them than that. And it was important for me to just give them their own um just I don't know what what am I
In
even trying to say?
introduction, it feels like it's that they want to be kind of introduced in some way. That's kind of what
Yeah,
it feels like.
I agree with that. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But yeah.
So, and now they're out there, and I just wonder what happens next and how your dreams may may change, or what happens next in the adventure. Now that they are out there. So yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. There's so much more. There's so many things I wish I could have done with the whole book. There's just I keep saying the word inspiration, but like there's just so much of it around right now, and I'm just able to constantly be able to tap into that. Even when I am tired and not working, I'm still there's never a moment where I'm completely over it. I'm still heavily interested and just plotting my next drawings or something. There's always more. So,
Well, thank you very much for doing what you're doing because it's just utterly brilliant. And I've been able to get a lot from it personally. And I know that it's done that for a lot of other people as well. So yeah, thanks for all your work that's done with, such an open heart and with honor and respect to these beings and the places that they come from, and the recognition of, how important it is to our landscape for these beings to be able to live in harmony with us, basically, which is what I feel, you've captured in your book, in your writing as well.
Thank you. Yeah, living harmoniously with all things is kind of like the one of the main themes of this whole collection, I think. So, thank you.
Thanks. Where is the best place for people to contact you?
Um, I'm mostly pretty much on Instagram, and it's just my name, Brett Manning, and then the word art. So Brett Manning Art. And um, same on Facebook.
Great, good stuff. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm loving the wall behind you, by the way.
Thanks.
Also a fan of our lounge, looks a bit like that. I just, yeah, I'm
Oh,
loving all the Thank you very much for joining me, Brett. And yeah, speak to you soon. Keep us posted with what you're doing and your dreams too.
thank you.
Thanks.